January 2021. The world watched as Saudi Arabia unveiled something unprecedented. Not just a city, not just a mega project. Something that sounded like it had been written by science fiction authors who had lost all connection to reality. The line, 170 kilometers long, 500 meters tall, 200 meters wide. 9 million residents, 0 cars, 0 streets, 0 carbon emissions. But these were just the basic specifications, buried in the promotional materials, scattered across investor presentations, hidden in leaked internal documents, and revealed through interviews with former employees. There existed a collection of promises so extraordinary that they defied not just engineering but imagination itself. Promises about artificial moons lighting the night sky, about robot servants attending to every need, about genetically engineering residents to live longer, about dinosaurs roaming a prehistoric island, about sand that glows in the dark, about predicting crimes before they happen. These were not rejected concepts. These were not brainstorming ideas that never left the meeting room. These were official plans, budgeted projects, promises made to investors and potential residents. This documentary examines the 10 most outrageous promises the line ever made. Not rumors, not speculation. Documented plans that reveal just how far ambition can travel from reality when unlimited money meets unlimited power, and nobody is allowed to say no. Some of these promises are merely impractical. Some are impossible with current technology. Some violate the laws of physics, and some raise profound questions about what kind of society the line was actually designed to create. This is a story of promises made in the desert, where truth became optional and imagination had no limits, until reality intervened. Promise number 10. 20 minutes from end to end. The line was 170 kilometers long. The official promise. Residents could travel from one end to the other in 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Let's do the mathematics that apparently nobody at NEOM was willing to present clearly. 170 kilometers in 20 minutes requires an average speed of 510 kilometers per hour. That's faster than the Shanghai maglev, the fastest commercial train in the world, which averages 431 kilometers per hour on its short route with no stops. But the line wasn't a point-to-point route. It was a city. Trains would need to stop. Frequently, 9 million people can't share 3 stations. The proposed system would have stations every few kilometers. Let's be generous and assume stations every 5 kilometers. That's 34 stations across the route. Each station stop, including deceleration, passenger exchange, and acceleration, takes a minimum of 60 to 90 seconds for high-speed systems. 34 stops at 60 seconds each adds 34 minutes just for stopping. The train would need to travel at speeds exceeding 700 kilometers per hour between stations to achieve the 20-minute promise. No train system in operation or development can achieve this. The physics of acceleration and deceleration alone make it impossible in such short segments. But the presentations showed sleek pods gliding silently through tunnels. The videos depicted happy residents arriving at their destinations in minutes. The promise was never Promise number 9. Flying taxis everywhere for shorter journeys. The line promised air taxis, autonomous flying vehicles that would lift residents from one point to another within the structure or across the open canyon between the 2 parallel walls. The renderings showed elegant craft silently hovering between glittering towers. No traffic, no waiting. Simply step onto a platform and be whisked to your destination. The problems. First, 9 million people cannot be served by air taxis. The airspace between 2 walls, 200 meters apart and 170 kilometers long, cannot accommodate the density of vehicles required. Air traffic control for millions of daily flights in a confined corridor would be impossible. Second, air taxis don't work indoors. The promotional materials showed vehicles operating inside enclosed spaces with ceilings. Rotorcraft require open air. The downwash from thousands of vehicles would create chaos in any enclosed environment. Third, no autonomous air taxi system exists at commercial scale anywhere in the world. Years later, the technology that the line promised as standard transportation doesn't exist. Fourth, battery technology cannot support the continuous operations shown in the materials. Charging infrastructure for thousands of vehicles was never addressed. The flying taxis remained in every presentation. The physics remained impossible. The promise was never questioned. Promise number 8. The artificial moon. This promise appeared in leaked internal documents and was confirmed by multiple sources who worked on NEOM's planning teams. The line would have an artificial moon. A massive drone, or potentially a tethered balloon, would hover above the city at night, illuminated to simulate moonlight. Some versions of the plan called for a movable light source that would track across the sky, mimicking the moon's natural movement. Why would anyone need an artificial moon? The rationale, according to sources, was aesthetic and psychological. The line's designers worried that the narrow canyon between the two walls would feel oppressive at night. Natural moonlight wouldn't penetrate effectively into the depths of the structure. An artificial moon would provide gentle illumination and a focal point in the night sky. The engineering challenges were never resolved. How do you keep a massive illuminated object stationary in desert winds that can exceed 100 kilometers per hour? How do you power it? How do you maintain it? What happens when it fails? How do you prevent it from interfering with aircraft? How do you simulate the phases of the moon? According to former employees, these questions were raised. The answers were always the same. We'll figure it out. We'll innovate. The technology will catch up to the vision. The artificial moon remained in the plans. The physics remained unaddressed. Promise number 7. Cloud seeding for regular rainfall. The line is located in one of the driest regions on Earth. Annual rainfall in the Tabuk province averages less than 50 millimeters. Some years see almost no rain at all. The line promised to change this. Through aggressive cloud seeding, NEOM would create regular rainfall over the development. Residents would experience rain, actual rain, in the desert. The vegetation planned for the line's internal gardens and external landscaping would be sustained partially by this induced precipitation. Cloud seeding exists. It works, marginally, in some conditions. It can increase rainfall by perhaps 10 to 15% when clouds are already present, but you cannot seed clouds that don't exist. The Tabuk region doesn't lack rain because clouds refuse to release their water. It lacks rain because moisture-bearing weather systems rarely reach the area. Cloud seeding cannot create weather patterns. It can only enhance existing ones. The rainfall promise would require fundamentally altering the climate patterns of northwestern Saudi Arabia. No technology exists to accomplish this. None is in development. The promise violated basic atmospheric science. Yet the promotional materials showed green gardens, flowing water features, and residents enjoying a temperate climate in desert, where it doesn't rain. Promise number 6. Genetic enhancement for residents. This promise was among the most controversial revealed in leaked documents and confirmed by the Wall Street Journal's investigation into NEOM. The line would offer genetic enhancement services to residents. The program, internally called NEOM Genomics, or similar variations, would use gene therapy and genetic engineering to enhance human capabilities. The stated goals included extending lifespan, increasing disease resistance, and improving physical and cognitive performance. According to documents reviewed by journalists, NEOM leadership discussed the possibility of the line becoming a destination for genetic tourism. Wealthy individuals would come to receive treatments unavailable elsewhere due to regulatory restrictions. The ethical implications were staggering. The line proposed creating a two-tier humanity, those who could afford genetic enhancement and those who could not. It proposed conducting experimental genetic procedures on humans in a jurisdiction with limited oversight. It proposed marketing genetic modification as a luxury amenity, like a spa or golf course. The technical limitations were equally daunting. Gene therapy remains experimental for most applications. The long-term effects of genetic modification in humans are unknown. The technology to safely enhance healthy humans, rather than treat specific diseases, doesn't exist. None of this prevented the promise from being made. The line would not just be a city. It would be a laboratory for human enhancement. Promise number 5. Robot servants for every resident. The line promised a robo-to-human ratio that would make every resident effectively wealthy. According to promotional materials and investor presentations, the line would deploy robots for virtually every service function: cleaning, cooking, delivery, security, maintenance, childcare assistance, elderly care, retail service, food preparation, medical assistance. The numbers implied by the presentations were extraordinary. To provide the level of service depicted, the line would need millions of functioning robots. Some estimates suggested a ratio approaching 1 robot per resident, or 9 million robots for 9 million people. For context, the entire global stock of service robots in 2024 was approximately 5 million units. The line proposed to deploy nearly double that number in a single development. The greater challenge wasn't quantity, it was capability. The robots shown in the line's materials performed tasks that no current robot can accomplish. They navigated complex social situations. They provided emotional support. They made judgment calls about human needs. They operated autonomously in unstructured environments. This technology doesn't exist. The most advanced service robots today can perform limited, structured tasks in controlled environments. They cannot replace human service workers in complex settings. The line promised a robot servant civilization. The technology gap between promise and reality spanned decades at minimum. Promise number 4. Dinosaur Island. This promise has become perhaps the most notorious example of the line's detachment from reality. NEOM's plans included an island in the Red Sea that would feature genetically recreated dinosaurs. Not animatronic dinosaurs, not virtual reality dinosaurs. According to leaked documents and multiple sources, NEOM seriously explored the possibility of using genetic engineering to recreate prehistoric creatures, or at least create convincing approximations for a Jurassic Park-style attraction. The scientific impossibility is absolute. Dinosaur DNA does not exist. DNA degrades over time, and after 65 million years, no recoverable genetic material remains from any dinosaur species. The oldest DNA ever recovered is approximately 1 million years old. Dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago. You cannot clone what you have no genetic blueprint for. The closest theoretical possibility would be reverse engineering dinosaur-like traits from birds. Dinosaurs, living descendants, but this would produce mutant chickens, not Tyrannosaurus rex. The gap between what is possible and what was promised is not a matter of technological development. It is a matter of fundamental biological reality. Yet the Dinosaur Island remained in NEOM planning documents. Meetings were held. Budgets were discussed. The impossible was treated as merely challenging. Promise number 3. Bioluminescent Beach. The LINE's coastal section would feature beaches where the sand itself glowed at night. The promotional materials showed stunning images of shorelines, illuminating with blue and green light, creating an otherworldly atmosphere for evening strolls. This wasn't metaphor or artistic license. NEOM proposed actually engineering bioluminescent sand. Bioluminescence exists in nature. Certain algae jellyfish and deep-sea creatures produce light through chemical reactions. Some beaches do glow naturally when bioluminescent plankton are disturbed by waves. But sand doesn't glow. Sand is silicon dioxide. It's a rock. You cannot make sand bioluminescent because bioluminescence requires living organisms. The proposed solution, according to sources, was to either embed the beach with bioluminescent organisms or to create synthetic materials that mimicked bio. Both approaches face insurmountable challenges. Bioluminescent organisms require specific conditions to survive and glow. They cannot survive in beach sand, under the desert sun. They would die quickly. Synthetic bioluminescent materials exist in laboratory settings, but degrade rapidly and cannot be deployed at the scale of an entire coastline. The glowing beach remained in the promotional materials. The chemistry remained impossible. The promise was never retracted. Promise number 2. Predictive services and pre-crime. The line promised to know what you need before you know you need it. This wasn't marketing hyperbole. The cognitive city concept at the line's core was designed to anticipate resident needs through comprehensive data collection and artificial intelligence analysis. According to documents and former employees, the system would work as follows. Every resident would have a digital twin, a complete virtual representation updated in real time. The city's AI would analyze patterns in your behavior, your health metrics, your consumption habits, your movement patterns, your social interactions, your communications. Based on this analysis, the line would predict and provide. Your dinner would be prepared before you decided what to eat. based on your patterns and current biometrics, indicating nutritional needs. Medical appointments would be scheduled before you noticed symptoms, based on subtle changes in your vital signs. Transportation would be summoned before you needed it, based on your calendar, your habits, and real-time analysis of your decision patterns. Shopping would be completed before you ran out of items, based on consumption tracking and predictive algorithms. This sounds convenient. It also sounds like the most comprehensive surveillance system ever proposed for civilian deployment. But the most disturbing promise went further. Predictive security. The line's AI would identify potential security threats before they materialized. The system would flag residents showing patterns associated with future criminal behavior, mental health crises, or social disruption. Drones would be dispatched if someone remained stationary too long, potentially indicating a medical emergency or, alternatively, suspicious behavior. The implications were profound. The line proposed a city where privacy effectively didn't exist, where every action fed an algorithm that would judge your future behavior, where being flagged by AI could result in intervention before you had done anything wrong. This wasn't dystopian fiction. This was the sales pitch. Promise number 1. A perfect society through design. The ultimate promise of the line was not any single technology or amenity. It was the promise that proper design could engineer a perfect society. The line would eliminate the problems that plague human civilization, not manage them. Not reduce them. Eliminate them. No pollution. Not low pollution. Zero pollution. No traffic. Not reduced traffic. Zero traffic. No crime. Not low crime. Zero crime. Through predictive intervention. No inequality of access. Every resident would reach any service within 5 minutes. No loneliness. The design would ensure social connection. No disease that could be prevented. The surveillance system would catch health issues before they became problems. No conflict. The AI would identify and resolve disputes before they escalated. This was the implicit promise beneath all the explicit promises. The line would solve humanity. The arrogance of this proposition is breathtaking. Every utopian project in history has failed. Every planned city has developed in ways its planners never anticipated. Every attempt to engineer human behavior has encountered the irreducible complexity of human nature. The line proposed to succeed where all others failed, not through humility and adaptation, but through total control. The perfect society would be achieved by monitoring every resident, predicting every behavior, and intervening before problems emerged. The question nobody asked publicly: what happens to residents who don't fit the algorithm? What happens when human messinaces disrupts the perfect design? What happens when people want privacy, spontaneity, or freedom from prediction? The line's answer, implicit in its design: such people wouldn't be welcome. The perfect society would be achieved by excluding imperfection. The problem-free city would be created by removing anyone who might cause problems. This was not a city designed for humans. It was a city designed for data points that happened to be human. Understanding how these promises emerged requires understanding the environment in which they were created. The line was not designed through conventional processes. It was not subjected to normal feasibility analysis. It was not tested against physical reality before being announced. The line emerged from a culture where ambition was rewarded and restraint was punished, where saying yes led to promotion and saying no led to termination, where the customer, in this case Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, was always right, regardless of what physics had to say. According to numerous sources who worked on the line, the promised escalation followed a predictable pattern. Step 1. MBS or his deputies would describe a desired outcome. Not a specific technology, but a feeling. Residents should feel like they're living in the future. Everything should be magical. Problems should disappear. Step 2. Consultants and designers would brainstorm features that might deliver that feeling. No idea was too outrageous at this stage. Creativity was encouraged. Criticism was not. Step 3. The most impressive ideas would be selected for presentation. Impressive meant visually striking and emotionally compelling, not technically feasible. Step 4. Leadership would approve the impressive ideas and ask for more. If dinosaur islands and artificial moons weren't enough, what else could be promised? Step 5. The approved ideas would appear in promotional materials. Once they appeared publicly, They could not be retracted without embarrassment. They became commitments. Step 6. Engineers and scientists would be asked to figure out how to deliver the impossible promises. When they explained the impossibility, they would be replaced by others who promised to try harder. This cycle continued until the line's promise portfolio included technologies that don't exist, physics that doesn't work, and biology that is impossible. The promises were not lies in the conventional sense. The people making them may have genuinely believed that innovation would somehow deliver. They lived in an environment where impossible had been achieved before, where Saudi Arabia had transformed from desert to modern state in a single generation, where unlimited money seemed to solve everything. They forgot that money cannot buy new laws of physics. By late 2024, the line had been scaled back by 98.6%. 170 kilometers became 2.4 kilometers. 9 million residents became 300,000. The artificial moon was not mentioned in revised plans. The dinosaur island disappeared from promotional materials. The genetic enhancement programs were quietly shelved. The bioluminescent beach was not referenced in any recent documents. The flying taxis became ground-based transportation. The 20-minute end-to-end promise became irrelevant when the structure shrank to a length that could be walked in 30 minutes. The predictive AI surveillance system remained in the plans, but for 300,000 people rather than 9 million. A very different proposition. $50 billion had been spent. 6,000 foundation piles stood in the desert, and the craziest promises had dissolved into the same sand that surrounded them. What lessons should we draw from this catalogue of impossible promises? The first lesson is about the danger of isolation from criticism. The line's promises grew increasingly detached from reality because no one could challenge them. When saying impossible is forbidden, impossible becomes the baseline. Every subsequent promise must be more impressive than the last, regardless of feasibility. The second lesson is about the seduction of narrative. The line sold a story. The future is here, and it's in Saudi Arabia. The promises weren't evaluated on technical merit. They were evaluated on how well they supported the narrative. Dinosaur islands and artificial moons are great for stories. They're impossible for engineering. The third lesson is about the limits of money. Saudi Arabia's public investment fund has over $700 billion in assets. It could, theoretically, afford to build almost anything. What it cannot afford to buy is new physics. No budget overcomes the fact that dinosaur DNA doesn't exist or that sand cannot glow. The fourth lesson is about promises and accountability. The LINE's impossible promises were made by people who will never be held responsible for their impossibility. The consultants have moved on. The designers have signed NDAs. The leadership will never admit error. The promises will simply be forgotten, replaced by new promises for whatever comes next. And the final lesson is about us, the audience for these promises. We wanted to believe. The videos were beautiful. The renderings were stunning. The vision was intoxicating. A city without problems, a future without friction, a life without limitation. We shared the videos. We wrote articles. We debated whether it could work. We gave the line attention, which was ultimately its primary product. The craziest promises weren't just made by Saudi Arabia. They were consumed eagerly by a world hungry for visions of a better future, even visions that could never become real. The line promised the impossible, and for a few years, millions of people believed it. The foundation piles stand in the desert now, monuments to promises that physics could not keep. The artificial moon never rose. The dinosaurs never walked. The sand never glowed. But somewhere, someone is already working on the next presentation, the next vision, the next impossible promise that will capture the world's imagination. And we will probably believe that one too, at least for a while.